Two guys, same office, same starting money, about $40,000 each, parked in the same unremarkable year. One of them did everything right. He read the newsletters. He watched the channels where men in good suits yell about companies. He had a spreadsheet. He had a strategy. He had strong opinions about the Federal Reserve at parties nobody had invited him to have opinions at. The other one, Gerry, bought one thing, told no one, and then basically forgot he owned it for a decade. 10 years later, one of them had pulled ahead. Not by a little, by the kind of margin that quietly ends friendships. And it was Gerry, the guy who did nothing. That's the part that doesn't sit right yet. How does the person trying the hardest lose to the person who barely shows up? Hold on to that because the answer turns out to be a small, very specific insult, and we'll get to exactly who it's aimed at. So let's start with the guy who did it the right way, because honestly, you'd have bet on him too. Call him the analyst. Two desks over from Gerry, same salary, same 40 grand to work with. The difference was effort. The analyst treated his money like a part-time job he was determined to be good at. Every morning before coffee, he checked his positions. Every evening, he read about what the smart money was supposedly doing. He learned the language, the multiples, the margins, the moats. He could explain why a stock was undervalued in a way that made you nod and feel slightly poorer for not understanding it. And here's the thing you have to understand about him. He wasn't an idiot. This is important. The story falls apart if you picture some clown throwing darts. He was diligent. He was curious. He did the homework that every finance personality on earth tells you to do. He also paid for help. Of course he did. He was serious. He found a fund run by professionals, people with credentials longer than his arm, people whose entire job was beating the market. He handed them a slice of his money and a yearly cut for the privilege. Smart, right? You hire the experts. You don't perform your own surgery. You don't manage your own millions. That fee was small, tiny even, a single number that looked completely harmless on paper. Remember that number. It comes back later, and when it does, it's wearing a mask. Meanwhile, two desks over, Gerry bought his one boring thing and went to lunch. Nothing dramatic happened. The market did its thing. Up, down, sideways, the usual heartbeat. The analyst had good months where he felt like a genius, and bad months where he quietly didn't bring up his portfolio. Gerry had no months because Gerry wasn't looking. Then the first real drop came, and this is where effort started to hurt. The market fell hard, fast enough to make the news, fast enough to make grown adults refresh their accounts at red lights. The analyst watched his positions bleed in real time, which is a special kind of torture only available to people who check. He'd read that you're supposed to stay calm. He'd also read that smart investors cut their losses. Those two pieces of advice point in opposite directions. And at 2 a.m., staring at a number that's smaller than it was yesterday, you can talk yourself into either one. So he did something, because doing something feels like control. He sold a little here, bought a little there, repositioned, rotated, got defensive, got aggressive again when things bounced. Every move felt smart in the moment. Every move was a decision, and every decision was a coin flip he was paying to make. Gerry, by contrast, did the single hardest thing in all of investing. He did nothing. He didn't even know there'd been a crash. He found out weeks later from a coworker and said, and I'm quoting the spirit here, "Oh, now fast forward through 10 years of this. 10 years of the analyst working, deciding, adjusting, paying. 10 years of Gerry forgetting. And when the dust settles and someone finally lines the two accounts up side by side, the result is so lopsided, it almost feels like a typo. Gerry won. Comfortably. The man who did nothing beat the man who did everything, and beat the professionals that the analyst had hired on top of it. Which brings us to the obvious, slightly maddening question. How? What did Gerry actually buy? Here's the answer, and it's so anticlimactic, it's almost rude. He didn't buy a company. He bought all of them. That's the trick. That's the whole thing. Instead of trying to find the one needle, Jerry bought the entire haystack. One single fund that quietly holds a tiny slice of hundreds of companies at once. The big ones, the boring ones, the ones you've heard of and the 400 you haven't. When the economy grows over time, the whole basket drifts up with it. He wasn't betting on a winner. He was betting that the entire system would, on average, keep doing what it's done for a century, and he refused to make any move more complicated than that. It's called an ETF, an exchange-traded fund. Three letters that quietly beat the entire finance industry's homework. But strip away the jargon, and it's almost insultingly simple. It's a box that owns a little piece of everything, charges you almost nothing to hold it, and asks you to do exactly one thing: leave it alone. And almost nothing is where this story stops being cute and starts being a quiet scandal. Remember the analyst's fee, the tiny, harmless number? Let's say it was 1.5% a year. Sounds like a rounding error. Feels generous even. A small thank you to the experts for their hard work. Except a fee isn't a one-time thing. It's a yearly bite, taken from your whole balance, every single year, whether the fund made money or lost it. It compounds against you. Over a decade, over 2 decades, that harmless 1.5% doesn't nibble. It eats. On a serious balance, across a working lifetime, that small number can quietly walk off with a third of everything you would have made. A third. For a service that, on average, didn't beat the boring box anyway. That's the mask coming off. The fee wasn't a thank you, it was a toll, charged on a road that went nowhere better. And the professionals, the credentialed experts the analyst hired to beat the market? Here's the number that should genuinely make you sit up. Over long stretches of time, the overwhelming majority of professional stock pickers, the suits, the funds, the people doing this full-time with teams and data you'll never see, failed to beat the simple average. Not some of them, most of them. The longer the time period, the worse it gets, until you're looking at a world where roughly 9 out of 10 of them lose to the haystack. Read that again. 9 out of 10 people whose entire job is winning this game can't beat a guy who left his money in a box and went to lunch. So that's the insult, and now we know exactly who it's aimed at. It's not aimed at Gerry, and it's not really aimed at the analyst either. He was just doing what he was told. It's aimed at an entire industry built on a quiet, expensive lie. That this is supposed to be hard, that you need them, that the path to wealth runs through complexity and fees and a man in a suit who deserves a cut. Because here's what actually happened in those 10 years. The analyst's effort didn't add anything. Worse, it subtracted. Every trade had a cost. Every panic sell locked in a loss. Every clever rotation was a chance to be wrong. And over enough flips, clever averages out to noise. The fees drained the tank in the background the entire time. He paid in money and in stress and in 2 a.m. dread for the privilege of finishing behind a man who couldn't have told you what he owned. And Gerry's secret weapon, the thing that beat the pros, wasn't intelligence. It wasn't timing. It wasn't some edge. It was the discipline to be boring. He bought the whole market, paid almost nothing to hold it, and then did the one thing the analyst's brain physically could not let him do. He left it alone, through the crash, through the boom, through the headlines screaming that this time was different. He let time and compounding do the heavy lifting, and the heavy lifting, it turns out, doesn't need a manager. So if there's a takeaway here, it's not investing is easy. It's something a little stranger than that. It's that in most parts of life, effort and reward move together. You work harder, you get more. Investing quietly breaks that rule. Past a certain point, a very early point, more effort doesn't buy you more return. It buys you more chances to be wrong, more fees, more taxes, More 2 a.m. decisions, you'll get 50-50 at best. The activity that feels like control is usually just the meter running. The boring box won't make you rich overnight. Nothing real does. But over a decade, 2 decades, a lifetime, the simple version, own everything, pay almost nothing, and have the nerve to do absolutely nothing, quietly beats the people who do everything, including, embarrassingly often, the experts you'd have paid to do it for you. Jerry didn't outsmart the market. He just refused to play the game everyone insisted he had to play. And the whole industry built on insisting otherwise, it really doesn't want you to know how little you have to do.